Howdy y'all, name's Clover. Welcome back if you've been here before, and if this is your first time to the channel, well, buckle up, cause I am a yapper. These time lapses are new to the channel, but I think I'm starting to figure out my footing here. I've decided to start calling them time yaps, kind of like it, because it's a time lapse, but I'm yapping over it. Yeah, so like time yaps. Anyway, if you ain't seen me talk about this before, part of the reason I'm doing these time yaps is so I can keep making VTuber rigs and animations without having to rely on commission payments. Not because I don't think my work ain't worth nothing, but because taking money directly actually really stresses me out. I honestly wish I could just rig all day and not have to worry about bills, but unfortunately I do need to keep the lights on and I need to put food on my table. So this video series is sort of my compromise on that. If these videos do well, ad revenue might let me keep doing what I love without having to carry the mental weight of direct payments. I'd rather focus on making stuff and sharing what I learned instead of stressing over whether someone's feeling like they got their money's worth. Just anytime money's involved, I really stress out so bad. So actually, I made a post the other day asking folks if they had PSD files ready, model art that was already cut and ready to be rigged in Live 2D. And Aqua was actually one of the first folks to answer that, get on there and post a picture of this little critter that we're working on today. That is Maro, and Maro is so cute. As soon as I saw the image, I was like, no way, is that the art? Like, that's cut and ready to rig? That is so adorable. I mean, they answered pretty quickly too, and showed me the file, and I was like, I kind of picked through it, and I was like, yes, done. Like, I'm doing this project. It is way too cute. But yeah, so the idea of Maro is that it's going to sit on top of Aqua's head while they're playing games. But don't let his cute little face fool you. Maro was a tough cookie with plenty of problems and puzzles for me to work through. One of the trickier parts was figuring out how to make idle animations and the tracking work well together without conflicting. See, Aqua does a lot of gaming, so they'll use a controller, they'll use a mouse, depending on whatever game it is, and the idea is that we wanted Maro to have their own set of movement, so he kind of looks around on his own, but is also interested in what's going on in the game. So like if Aqua is moving the controller around, Maro's gonna look with that controller movement on top of their idle movement. Same thing as if they're playing a game with a mouse, that idle movement's going, move the mouse, and it's gonna flick Maro to look around as well. So that wasn't too terrible for me to figure out. I had actually done this before on Maple Chicken's model. I did it with mouse movement and idle animation, and I actually have a better way of doing it now than when I set it up with Maple Chicken. That's a whole nother story, but basically the failures and the things that I learned through Maple Chicken helped. They bled into this project and I was able to do a bit better. However, I still didn't figure out a good way to make a innate switch in the model. I still need to brainstorm. I probably spent about 2 hours brainstorming trying to figure out if there's a way I can make like a little toggle where it went between controller and mouse movement. There's got to be a way. I just probably am overthinking it. But anyways, I ended up making 3 different models of Maro. One with face tracking, so it has no idle animation or anything like that, and Aqua can use that if they ever want to make separate content, just face tracking with Maro. I made a model that has controller movement along with the idle animation, and a model with mouse movement along with the idle animation. And if the struggles ended there, then that would have been too easy of a day, I would suppose. So the other issue is we had a lot of animated toggles on top of this stuff, which typically ain't really that much of an issue, but the idea is like if we have head movement going on and VTube Studios feels something else pulling on that head angles, because those are baked into every model. So if something else is calling to the angle like head movements, then the animation file won't play, basically is how that works. If something's already calling to it, the animation won't do nothing with it. So I had to kind of go back and forth and figure out my methodology on that. What I ended up with, for anyone who knows about Live 2D or is curious how I did it, I ended up making a toggle switch that turns on when the animation plays, because VTube Studios will change out the idle animation to play the animation file of whatever, like the yawn, for example, or the treat, whatever it is, right? So by default, once the animation changes, it flips on this toggle and it turns off the physics-based angle movement and turns on the animation-based angle movement. So there's actually, angle XYZ physics for just regular movement, and then there's angle XYZ animation for the animation movement. And that's how we got around all that nonsense. All that just to say that it was quite the puzzler. What would have been a 6.5 hour rig turned into an 8.5, 9 hour rig just because of the amount of times I had to stop and go through my notes and look up tutorials and kind of figure things out, so that I could get the animation and the controller track and all that stuff to work. But truth be told, I'm actually really happy and grateful that I did get stumped by certain parts of this project. Because, I don't think there's a single thing I know how to do today that I didn't mess up at least once or twice beforehand. Actually, most of the time I mess up way more than that. Like, I'm messing up all the time, especially in Lab 2D. You would not believe the amount of times I stared at a model trying to figure out why something's moving when I never thought I set something up to move that way. So sometimes I really, in the middle of working things out, things get kind of stressful. That kind of learning holds a lot better, in my opinion. The roots really set in when you have to kind of struggle and work with it. Because, you remember all that time you spent trying to figure it out. So by the time you get an answer, you really know and understand that process and why it was breaking and what you got to do next time you run into it. But, the same thing kind of goes for life, if I'm going to be honest, too. Like, for example, boundaries. I didn't know how to set them without setting too few or too many, whatever it was. Figuring out how to rest without burning myself out. Learning how to talk through stuff without messing up a few conversations real bad, like to the point of cringing. Just general life stuff. Kind of mess up a ton before I started getting better at it. I don't know, thinking about that makes me think about my relationship with failure in general. I used to hate failure. Like, genuinely could not stand the idea of someone seeing me fall flat. I really cared. Maybe it was pride, right? But I really cared about what folks thought of me. I wanted them to think I had it all together all the time. And if I couldn't do it perfect, I did not want to be seen doing it. Do not perceive me. If I don't know 100% that I can do this right every single time, I don't want no one looking at me. All right, that kind of fear made me super quiet and very reserved, very small in personality. I actually did not realize how much I was shrinking myself to avoid looking like I didn't know what I was doing. I was letting myself be a background character because I just didn't want to be seen unless I was perfect. Lately I've come to feel a bit different about that. I think failure is just another way of moving forward. Maybe a little bit slower, sometimes, or, messy. It's a messy way forward, but it is forward. It's still learning, figuring stuff out. Man, I remember this one time back in high school, I decided I was going to learn how to do makeup. I didn't really have much help figuring it out either. I'm kind of old, so this was before YouTube tutorials were really a big thing or helpful in any way. Plus my internet, I had dial-up internet and it was just dog water. I did not use the internet like that back then. Really, the only guide I had was this crinkled up issue of 17 magazine. I'd read it cover to cover. Oh my goodness, so many times. The front cover was coming off. I'd flipped through it so much. But, I didn't grow up in a house where makeup was really taught either. My mama's always been more of a tomboy. She's tough, she's capable, and she's completely uninterested in blush or eyeliner. So I was really trying to figure this out on my own. Right. So I tried the best with what I had. I had some drugstore makeup that I'd picked up with my friends, and I was real heavy-handed in places that I really needed. I should have been more soft with, and then I was barely there on things that I could have been more bold on. And I looked in the mirror and I had raccoon eyeliner and big rosy cheeks, a patchy foundation. Oh goodness, it was horrible. But I felt proud because I did it. It was the first time I seen myself with makeup on. I was like, oh my goodness, look at me, right? So, I go down the stairs. I felt like celebrating. I go downstairs, my mama and my uncle sitting on the couch, and yeah, my uncle, bless his heart, man, without even meaning no harm, he just took one look at me and said, what circus you running with these days? Oh man, my heart, y'all, it sank. It really just boom, straight to the floor. I was young, I was real tender and easily embarrassed, so I ran straight back upstairs and I washed all that off. I scrubbed my face raw just to get it all off. And it took me a minute, I felt real embarrassed, but then after some couple days, I was thinking about it, and I was like, no, all my friends are still trying to do makeup. I want to try new makeup. So, no, I decided to do my makeup the same way right before school. Yeah, and y'all know how kids can be. I got some not so kind comments at school. And, oh man, I let that embarrassment really settle deep in me. I was so embarrassed, I let it convince me that I was just bad at it, and I quit trying altogether. Like, I was like, I ain't gonna pick up a makeup brush ever again. Yeah, I really shied away from makeup forever after that. I mean, I was like 6th grade, and it wasn't until like my mid-20s, believe it or not, that I even tried picking up a stick of eyeliner again. It took me that long to feel safe enough to try again. Which is wild, I had let that set so deep in myself. No one really forced me to feel that way. But I did let it impact me that much. I will say I still ain't great at doing makeup. But I like the little bit that I figured out. I got a routine and I like it quite a lot. And I've had folks gently mention things that looked off, and that has helped me. I have one of my best friends, a good buddy of mine from the military. She ain't one for teasing or making a thing of things. She just is a very kind soul, and she'd been doing her makeup for years, and she took one look at me and she's like, I'd love to teach you some stuff. If you're interested, you come on over to my place and do our makeup together. And she told me about her first tries were always just as messy or worse than what I was showing up with. And I don't know, the kindness from her really stuck with me. It helped me realize how important grace is, both on the giving end and the receiving end. So now, if someone mentions that my eyeliner's crooked or my makeup looks a little funky, I don't fall apart. I do ask what they think I should do different. I'm like, hey, you felt compelled to say something about my makeup. Like, what part of it you think I could improve on? And yeah, it's still embarrassing, but it don't paralyze me like it used to, and that's a win. Not the perfect makeup, but the courage to understand things and keep trying to learn and improve, right? Actually, one of the trickiest places I've had to face failure is in understanding myself. Turns out I've got ADHD. Now, the ADHD part I've been known about since I was a kid, but the autism part I didn't learn about till way later into my adult life, actually within the past 3-4 years. And when I found that out, suddenly a whole lot of things about my life started making sense, like my emotional outbursts. The way my feelings tend to erupt out of me without very much warning, especially in my younger days, without realizing that was not the norm. I have ended up burning a lot of bridges in my life. Said things too fast or too sharp, too loud. Sometimes I'd realize right away, but other times it would take me much later to realize what I had said or what I'd done. Once the heat passed and I could actually think straight, I'd be like, oh no, I messed up. I used to feel real ashamed of that too. I actually would hide from it and try to avoid the conversation about it because I did not know how to approach it. I felt like I was broken. I'd try to stuff all these feelings down and pretend I didn't need time to process, pretend I wasn't overwhelmed and that I was doing fine, trying to be like everyone else until eventually I'd snap again. And it was just this vicious cycle over and over and over, one that I just could not seem to break out of. But yeah, over time and with help, I've started learning to recognize the signs. I figure out phrases I can use, sort of like little flags I can wave around to folks, so they don't think I'm mad at them. I'm just struggling with my own brain. Just little stuff like, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I just need a minute to breathe. I'm having some strong feelings and I don't want them to take the wheel right now. Simple stuff, but it's effective communication, and it gives me room to pause without making things worse. And those moments where I failed to speak up before, those are the ones that taught me how important it is now. I really do not love the way I have hurt folks or let myself get hurt in order to learn this, but I am thankful for what it has showed me, and I'm a lot more careful now. Not perfect by any means. I don't think I'll ever be perfect, but always doing better. Never perfect, but always doing better. And I think that's kind of the thread through it all. Just in general, thinking about, failure, success. What does that mean, right? You mess up, you learn, and you try again with a little bit more knowledge in your hand than the last time. Every stumble, it can leave a mark. Yeah, sometimes those marks are the only way that you can see how far you've come. There was a good bit of my life that I thought success meant being big, applaud-worthy moments, the kind of things that folks would stop and take notice of, like awards and finished products and viral posts, real tangible stuff you could point to and say, see, look at that, y'all, I did something. Look at that. And anything in between, unfinished sketches, failed experiments, small progress on a big project, none of it felt worth mentioning. It felt like if it wasn't done, then it wasn't great, and so then it didn't count. That's how I saw it for a long time, actually. As time has gone on, as I've become withered and creaking in my bones, I have started to see things differently. I've started to feel proud of just showing up, of sitting down and trying, even if the end result is just absolute garbage or never sees the light of day. I've realized that the beginning and the end of a road don't make a whole road. You need the actual in-between to travel on. If I can't celebrate the travel, the journey, I ain't never gonna feel satisfied. No matter how big the wins stack up, it just will never feel like enough. So success now looks a lot more like progress. It's the slow mornings where I still get out of bed and draw, even if I don't like what I made. It's reaching out to a friend when I feel myself closing off. It's fixing a mistake I've made a dozen times before, instead of getting mad at myself and shutting down. And it ain't about reaching the peak of everything. It's about growing, getting a little stronger, a little kinder. Every time I fall down, I just pick myself back up, wipe off the dust, and keep on going. A lot of little questions come up in life, while I'm working or just doing what I'm doing. Nothing big or philosophical, just things that poke and prod at me, get me thinking. Like, when did I stop letting myself be a beginner? You know what I mean? Like, when did I decide that if I couldn't do something right the first time, I shouldn't do it at all? And how much time have I wasted hiding the parts of me that were still learning and still growing just because I thought folks wouldn't want to see anything less than a finished, polished product? Sometimes I wonder what I might have learned faster if I'd let more folks in, if I'd been brave enough to say, I don't understand what's going on here, like I just don't get it. And sometimes I think about the other folks who feel this way, maybe even right now, feeling like they're the only ones who haven't figured it out. I genuinely hope they don't think they're alone. A lot of us are out here patching it together and learning as we go, even if we don't have the courage to say it out loud. None of us got this stuff figured out, man. Life is crazy. It's real messy, and sometimes you're gonna have to stop and ask, what would it look like to live like trying is enough? What does life look like when trying is okay? And it's something I'm still figuring out. I ain't perfect. I get embarrassed. I worry about my image or what people think. But I don't know. I'm working on it. Every day is an improvement. Every failure is another way that I've learned to do better, But anyway, I reckon I've yapped long enough now. If you made it this far, thank you kindly for listening. Like, truly, these time yaps are still a work in progress, so I don't know what's going to happen with them going forward, the things I'll talk about. I genuinely just opened up Audacity and just started yapping about whatever comes to mind. So if this is something that y'all enjoyed, let me know. If there's more direction you'd like to see or things you'd like to hear, let me know, and I'll try to work those in and figure out my footing here as we go forward. But I'm hoping y'all enjoy this. I genuinely do. If nothing else, I'm going to keep showing my process, the failures and everything, and talking through the thoughts that come to mind while I work. And hey, if these videos can help me stay afloat in the meantime, even better. I'd much rather yap over a time lapse than stress myself out with all the invoices and trying to figure out all that, and be able to bring y'all's creations to life. I don't want money to be the bar for entry for getting your dreams to start moving, V2 models and stuff. That stuff gets expensive, man. So if I can find a way to finance that through YouTube instead of directly invoicing y'all, that would be fantastic. But yeah, anyways, thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.